Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is John Craig.
And this is Sandy.
We welcome you to this edition of Walking in Spirit and Truth.
Okay.
And we're here together again.
It's better that way.
Hey, so we're going to continue this study on Psalm 1. I hope you've been enjoying it. And if you've missed any of the studies that we've done in the past, in fact, most of them Sandy's done by herself because I've been gallivanting around the country. But I'm here tonight again. And I'm excited to see what the next step, but you can go to the Life of Worship channel and pick up on all of the Psalm 1 study. So
he said, Al said, just think 1 tablespoon from everyone, you'll have a full plate.
Al,
he's not going to sample anybody's food. If he does,
that's a really good idea.
No. Anyway, so Psalm 1. Are you even ready for that? Have you turned there? Are you right there yet,
yeah,
Mr. Craig?
I'm determining the version I'm going to use.
Well, it's time. Everybody turning to your word, and we're going to read together. And again, just like when we did Psalm 91 and Psalm 23, by the end of this, you'll have this memorized, I pray. And you can just quote it.
So Psalm 1, you want me to read the whole thing?
I want you to read some of it. I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay, so beginning with Psalm 1, verse 1. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the Torah of Yahweh. And in his Torah he meditates day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper.
All right. So here we have one more time the promises of Yah's word, which are yes and amen. And we've been studying the word way or derek. And where do we get that? The man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked or stand in the way of sinners. Now, last week we were discussing in detail, and we're going to continue discussing that word in detail because it's going to shed more light on what it means to walk in Yah's way or in the counterfeit way, the way of sinners, because there's a choice we have to make. So I want us to turn to Proverbs 14:12. Proverbs 14:12.
Proverbs 14:12. Okay.
And it says, there is a way, derek, which seemeth right unto a man, but in the end thereof are the ways of death.
Hey, I got it right here.
Okay, what does your version say?
There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death.
That's the same thing I said.
Well, I changed my version.
You just read out of the KJV as well.
I did. Right.
Okay, so what does that say to you? I mean, it's pretty easy, right?
Yes.
What seems right to us is probably going to lead to death.
Yeah, because, well, figure this. When I was raised in my parents' home and we went to the Baptist church.
You were raised in your parents' home?
I was, not outside the home, but I was inside the home. But they'd let me go outside. Okay. And
by the way,
sometimes in the car too.
I'm so glad. By the way, his senior year, he actually didn't get, his parents moved from the country to Africa, and he didn't get to move. He stayed in Norway. So he wasn't there.
I know.
The whole time of your childhood.
Not the whole time. That's right.
Because your parents lived in Africa and you lived in Norway.
Yeah, so. My last semester of my senior year. But here we go. Here what we have is what I was going to say. Okay. Is that even though we attended Sunday morning church, Sunday evening church, Wednesday night church, I mean, we special time event church, we were there all the time, but it seemed to be the right way. But guess what? It wasn't Torah. We ate pig. We ate shrimp. We didn't keep the Shabbat, and we didn't keep the feast days. And according to the word, it says that if you don't keep the feast days, you're going to be cut off from the people. If you don't keep Passover, you're going to be cut off from the people. We were following a way it seemed right, but the end is death.
Okay. Now, considering your mother is probably going to listen to this, what are you going to say?
I was going to say, we live in the light that we know and the understanding. But once we come to the knowledge of it, and we're accountable to it, whether it agrees with our traditions or not, we're accountable for the truth that we receive. And so once we're exposed to it and it doesn't quite make sense, but truth is still truth, then we've got to figure out, okay, maybe I need to figure out realigning.
Does that mean you get a pass to ignore the truth if you're ignorant of it? No.
But I want to tell you this, there's grace to move forward in the truth that you know. And what's grace? It's not saying, I can just.
It is not unmerited favor
it's not. It's
the church says. That's not what grace is.
It's not sloppy agape. It's not none of that. No, grace is the power to overcome.
The power to do what Yah's called you to do.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know how to do this. And so what do? We say, okay, Father, I don't know how to do this. I've got all my friends. I've got all the traditions. We got a family. We've got all of these things. Then we're in this, what is that called? We're trying to hold two things in our mind at the same time, which really creates, it creates, what is that? What's it do? It causes your brain doesn't function, a dysfunctional brain. There's other better words than that.
I don't know where you're going.
Yeah, but you can't hold two things.
You can't have two opinions. You can't serve man.
You can't
serve two masters.
You can't have two things that you believe are true, even though they are opposite, and hold them in your brain. You can't do it.
Eddie, it's live. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, we would remove some of these bloopers if it was Memorex. Haha. But here's the thing. We are talking about finding the way, the narrow path or the wide path. Most people are on a wide path. King Hezekiah, and you need to go back and listen to my teachings on that. I think I did it in walking. I need to make sure they're up. But Hezekiah followed a narrow path. He got a second chance, and then he followed the wide path. We have a choice. And even though we may not understand we're on the wide path because we're not following his instruction, that is where we are. Mm. You were still on the wide path. Mm-hmm. Does that negate how much your family loved and served the King of Kings? No. They loved Jesus. They served. Your family were missionaries all over the world. That's what they did on their spare time, on their vacation. They served in their congregation. They love God with all that all your dad knew, and your mom still loves Yahweh or Jesus. She loves him with all her heart.
And you know what? And Yah loves them.
That's exactly right.
With all his heart. So.
And your mom and dad are great people. They're great man and woman of God. And so but that doesn't negate the fact that we need to follow his instruction.
Yeah.
How much more? I think of all the wasted time following a wide path that we were on, even though I've served Yahweh all my life. That from the earliest memory I have, I've always done this. But we didn't officially, we were always known as a congregation. When we brought up our congregation life of worship in 2005, they said we were the church who studied Hebrew, who worshiped too much, and we were too Jewish. But we still didn't know Hebrew roots. We didn't know that. We just knew.
We didn't know that was a thing.
We just knew that we wanted the truth.
We're isolated here in Amarillo, Texas. We knew nothing. We knew nobody in the whole.
Yeah, we actually did, because we did visit a congregation here. We take our whole congregation there because we agreed with that, and we studied Hebrew and things. We just didn't know all the other stuff. But still, even before that, there was so much time on a wider path, even though we were trying to do our very best. How much more could we have accomplished if the whole time we would have been on the narrow path, following the instructions of Yah as they're supposed to be followed? Which path are we going to be on? Well, let's look at this word direct one more time, as we did before. Let's look at the gematria of it, which is 224. And when you look at that one more time, it's going to add meaning to the word that you are looking at. So here we have the direct 224. It's the same as the word mifkad, MIPHKD number 4662 in your Strong's Concordance. And it's used a few places in the word. We're going to go over that. First, we see King David counting his fighting men, and that's 2 Samuel 24:9 and 1 Chronicles 21:15. All right.
I'm going First Chronicles.
No, 2 Samuel 24:9.
2 Samuel 24:9. Okay, I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I don't have my paper Bible tonight, so I feel like
You can use mine.
I can't use. It's like putting your shoes on and they don't fit.
My Bible's wonderful. I love it.
I know, but it's not my Bible, so
Okay.
it doesn't fit me.
It's
So 2 Samuel 24:9, and Joab gave up the sum of the number of the people unto the king, and there was in Israel 800,000 valiant men that drew the sword, and the men of Yehudah were 500,000 men.
right. And then we see it again in 2 Chronicles 31:13 and or 21:5, and it says the number of the census of the people is basically what it's talking about. And we know what happened with that. Well, there was trouble associated with all of that. Now, next we see that 2 Chronicles 31:13 in the appointment of people into positions of by King Hezekiah. Remember, I had already mentioned King Hezekiah. He followed the narrow path, and then he got a second chance and followed a wider path. He changed, and still good king, but he chose a certain way. 2 Chronicles 31:13.
And it says, and Yehiel, and Azaziah, and Nahath, and Asahel. And did you do this so I could say all these names? Okay. And Yeremoth, because I don't know names like this, and so I struggle. Yehozabad, and Eliel, and Ismachiah, and Mahath, and Beniah, and were overseas under the hand of Conaniah and Shimei, his brother, at the command of Hezekiah the king and Azariah, the ruler of the house of God. You did that on purpose.
I actually didn't, but it was sure fun. So
That's a tongue
when you
twister
see
for
this-
my
this-
American tongue.
This is the appointment of people into certain positions is what it's talking about when you
Okay.
hear men of God in this instance. So now we have this understanding of a census or a muster, and then we have this idea of appointment or putting people into positions, accounting. And then we have it as an appointed place, a designated area of the temple during the burning of the sin offering, Ezekiel 43:21. And this is the final place we're going to see this word mifkad, but it has some other significance, and we're going to talk about it as well concerning Nehemiah in Nehemiah. And are we there yet, Mr. Craig?
We are very close.
Ezekiel 43:21.
It's getting hotter.
You are faster in your paper Bible than you are online.
I know. Ezekiel 43:21, thou shalt take the bullock also of the sin offering, and he shall burn it in the appointed place of the house without the sanctuary.
Okay,
Or
so
on the outside.
So now we
sanctuary.
see this word mifkad as an appointed place. Do you see that word over there?
I see the appointed place. I do. Mifkad.
All right, the appointed place, mifkad.
The designated spot.
The designated spot. So this is going to have meaning with the way. So let's bring it all back in. So we have this muster, this counting, an appoint or appointed place, appointment. But it was also the name of a special gate in Jerusalem. And you say, well, which gate is that? And the Mifkad gate. And it was the last of the 10 gates repaired by Nehemiah, and it's located near the temple on the northeast side of Jerusalem, and it's not far from the sheep gate. And we'll see that in Nehemiah 3:31-32. It says, after him repaired Malchiah, the goldsmith's son, unto the place of Nethinims and the merchants over against the gate Mifkad, and to the going up of the the corner. So it was this gate that where David decided to take the census, which we've already talked about, which was against what? It was against what y'all wanted, right? And so what happened as a result of that? 70,000 were killed by a plague. And David then saw what the error of his way and said, man, I messed up. I messed up. And he purchased Oman's threshing floor and built an altar there for Yah. But this gate Mechad, when we look at it, it also it means the place or where the presence of God is, where we receive forgiveness, if you sort of look at it prophetically, and by the blood of Yeshua. And you can look at it that way if you would like to. And it's really interesting to sort of do a study on these gates, which we have before online, actually, on this show. And so you should look at that as well. But outside the gate, what happened outside the gate, the Mifkah gate? Well, it is said that outside of that gate is where Messiah was executed. And it was the same place where the red heifer was sacrificed. And what was that done? That was in order to cleanse us, those who had been tainted with sin. And it was also, were not pure. And it was also the Mifkah appointed place where Israel, what is supposed to happen there? We're to declare our lineage. So that counting, that appointment, that mustering. So we see that there. But when you bring it all in together, there it really goes down with, are we going to the appointed place, down the right path, the path where we're counted, the path where we get our assignments, the path that is the appointed and anointed place we're supposed to be? Are we going to follow a different path? Well, that seems obvious, maybe, but this is what this way is talking about, the way of sinners. Which way are we following? So 2 paths, there's one more time, 2 paths presented to Israel upon leaving Egypt. Is that same decision going to be made or offered to us one more time? Are we going to say, hey, there's an exodus from this Egypt. There's an exodus. There's a time to leave. You can either go by way of the wilderness or you can go by the way of the Philistines. Which one are you going to choose? Well, you may say, well, the Philistines aren't, we aren't Philistines. Where's the Philistines now? Well, we know that Egypt is symbolic of the world, and that's what we're in. But the Philistines were always at enmity with Yahweh, always at enmity with Yah. And so are we going to go along with those who really have that anti-Messiah spirit within them? And I'm not saying, oh, I'm an anti-Messiah. No, I'm not saying that. But if you are not following his ways, if he is the word and Yeshua is the word made flesh, and you're against following his word, that are you walking in the spirit of an anti-Messiah? Yes. Because you're not wanting to follow the word of Yahweh. And the word made flesh is Yeshua. So you're against his word. So wouldn't that mean you're against Yeshua?
Well, I mean, if you just think about the definition, you follow Messiah or you do not follow Messiah. And so if that spirit of anti-Messiah has been in the world for, centuries.
Okay, so let's look at Philistines, since they are always seem to be at enmity with Israel. So they're always the way of the Philistines is a way that's always against Yah's people. It seems to be, and that same path is going to be presented just as for us, just as it was for our ancestors, just as it was for our forefathers. So who were the Philistines? In the Word, in the Bible, they're remembered as an uncircumcised people, and they had advanced technology. And they had a strong, formidable military, which we see in Judges 14:3 and 1 Samuel 13:19 through 20 and Exodus 13:17. And they oftentimes encroached on Israelite territory. They seemed to always be at the heels. They were trying to take over, doing what they do. And it led to battles, including we have David and Goliath, who was a Philistine. And the Philistines were known as idol worshipers and soothsayers, and they just weren't a good lot. They were against Yah. Okay, so let's look at our culture today. Do we have people with strong militaries and advanced technology that worship their idols and worship their own way and try to encroach on the people of Yah? That's a question for you.
Oh, Yes, I'm sorry. I think my brain got sunburned today.
Okay, so I'll answer my own question. The whole point, I want some commentary from your side.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Eddie.
Can
I
you-
need Eddie and Tammy on the show so they can be my sidekick today because you're not doing it.
Can you inject some aloe vera between my ears?
No. Because Eddie and Tammy are saying, yes, that's just like today. People who are against Yahweh, people who have advanced military, and people who have advanced technology, who worship idols, who are soothsayers and follow a different way. Are we going to follow the way of the Philistines where there's advancement, where there seems to be a promise of materialism? Are we going to follow his way into the wilderness? Which one? Well, we know that we're to follow his way into the wilderness. And okay, so let's look at the Philistines because we know they're bad guys. Which way are we following? They're bad guys. We're not supposed to live like that. They lived in the cities of Ashdod, Eshkelon, Ekron, Gath, Gaza, in the heartland of ancient Philistia on the Mediterranean Sea southern shore. Now, what is really interesting is they've had vast trade networks. So the Philistines sort of had their foot in the game in areas all over that known world at the time because they were involved in trade, right? And they flourished in the Iron Age, the 12th through 6th centuries BCE. So they were a strong people and they eventually got assimilated by Assyria as well. But here's something that's interesting. If you look at the background of the Philistine people, they've looked at DNA actually of earlier grave sites from the Philistine people, and they seem to have been from Crete, actually. And then when they went and tried to make war with the Egyptians who defeated them, some of the Philistine tribes ended up settling in the area of Canaan, or Canaan, if you might want to say it that way. And that's how those people ended up in that area. But I think it's really interesting that they have this European heritage as well. So
very interesting.
European heritage
but mixed in their bloodline, they had Nephilim.
Well, absolutely. And then now later on down the line, when you look at DNA that was further down the line, they had mixed with so many people that they were just like everybody else. When you look at that DNA line, I'm not talking about the Nephilim part. I'm talking about just the different cultures after they assimilated with other cultures at the time. But when the earlier ones, that's where they came from. But nonetheless, the way of the Philistines, the way of the world, the way of Egypt. Which way are we going to travel?
You know, no, I was just thinking a little bit too. I'm just totally off subject, so I shouldn't even go there. Okay.
Well, and Eddie said Greek heritage, which is real. I mean, Greek. Hello.
Well, I was just thinking about it was the Phoenicians that had the ships, the sailing ships, and so it was the Phoenicians that transported these people all over. Well, one of the places that the giants were connected with Phoenicians because they got on ships and they went to Sardinia, where they found these huge skeletons. And as well as the Phoenicians were ocean-going, people, which also transported these Nephilim to North America, where they have found grave sites with giants. I mean, where do they all come from? They would have all come from, this area, and they would have been, as Israel moved in, they were moving out. And why not jump on a ship and head overseas? So, but it also makes sense that there would have been a connection with an interbreeding and intermarrying with the Philistines, and where you would end up with Goliath and his two brothers. I don't know. It's very interesting.
Multiple brothers.
Yeah, multiple. I thought there was 3 of them, but there might have been more.
Some say 5. There's 5 total, including Goliath, one for each
stone.
rock. Yep.
One stone for each one. Yeah. So yeah, but nevertheless, it's kind of going off track, but very, very interesting, and goes right along with this.
Well, I think it's interesting that Eddie and Tammy said the Canaanites landed at Jekyll Island, and again, Go back and research. Don't take our word for it. I mean, I was doing some research on the Philistine people today and other things. So always study things out for yourself. And let's continue with this word. So now we have this idea that the way, are we going to take the way of the Philistines or the way of the wilderness? And we have it connected to Mifkad. But it's also, when we look at Derek, we also have the same letters from Derek, which is going to end up bringing some meaning to the word as well. So which way are we following? Which path are we following? So Derek is number 1869, and it means to take a step, to tread, to bend, lead, march, or trample. Wow. So that means Derek has something to do with that, because this word Derek then implies a journey, a manner, a custom, conduct. And it's used in scripture a lot. And it almost imitates the sound of feet when they're forcefully hitting the ground. Think of a march. Think of a cadence.
You know what I'm thinking?
What?
I'm thinking of a rut. When you get a lot of people on that same custom, that same journey, doing the same thing, that same culture. And, for example, we were up in Kansas City and we went to the beginning of the Santa Fe Trail. Was that the Santa Fe Trail?
I don't even remember that.
And you see these big ruts of the covered wagons where they would lead out and leave out through there. And those ruts, I mean, they're still there today, and they're big ruts. And you just think about this drop, how people, why is it hard for people to get out of their customs, out of their traditions? Because they get in a rut that too many people have laid down before them. It now feels familiar. And I would even say it's familiar to the point that even the DNA remembers that custom.
Well, think of muscle memory. Think of when you're practicing an instrument, that you continue to, as you're learning to play, you can develop muscle memory in your hands, but it also in the way you're thinking, that pattern of thought, so that you can play easily.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same sort of that memory, that which way is easier. Well, the way of the wilderness is always going to be unfamiliar.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a way that's rutted.
But on the other side of it, isn't it true that as believers, and for example, if we have the bloodline of Abraham in us, according to the word, is that his seed will be throughout the entire world. Wouldn't it be true also, though, there's a memory of the Torah that's in there waiting to be released, which causes us to break out of that rut, out of the false path, the false customs, traditions, conducts, and all that sort of thing, and allows us to jump into the narrow path.
Okay.
I mean, I think physically and spiritually, they both work together. Those aha moments, I think there's a connection. Personally, this is just me thinking, but I think personally, it's in our DNA and it's spirit.
Agreed. So let's sort of backtrack to this word Derek, which is going to play into the meaning of Derek, the way. Derek, to step, tread, bend, journey, custom, conduct. It imitates the sound of feet when hitting the ground forcefully, especially when breaking anything by trampling it. Derek. When Yah tells us to walk in the way, it's not supposed to be this leisurely garden stroll where we're looking to and fro. That's not what this word Derek means. When you add this to the meaning, when you're following the way, it's like this military march. Think about that. A march, to trample. When you're following the way, it's in cadence with him.
So it's not a stroll where it's leisurely. The foot and the leg are actively involved in pushing forward.
Okay, so everywhere your foot treads, but what does your foot and your leg represent spiritually? Your walk.
Right.
So we're supposed to purposely place our feet. It's like, okay, I'm going to use you as an example again, John.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
if when you're leisurely following away, if you see something, you might, hey, let's go that direction. Or we've talked before, you're driving and you see something alongside the road and you look and you have this tendency to sort of drive in the direction that your eyes are focused. Well, if you're marching and if you're in cadence, if you have this military march way of walking the way, then it's going to be purposeful. It's going to be planned. It's following a leader. It's going to be following Yeshua. And 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 you're not to allow yourself to be distracted to the right or the left, because remember, on each side of the path, of each side of his path, his narrow way, the path of righteousness is chaos. And it might look good, but it leads chaos. It might look good on either side, but it's chaos. And that's not where we're heading. Our goal is Yeshua, where we find rest. So here's this word, following the way, is as this military march. Let me finish this train of thought and I'm going to let you jump in. And as you walk in that way, you're going to trample. Remember, I said it's like you hear the sound of that trampling anything on that path. So you're trampling everything that exalts itself against the kingdom of Yahweh when you're walking on the way. So we're marching because we're at war. We are soldiers. We know that. That's the word. We have our armor on. We're ready to go. And we are trampling everything in that path that's tried to exalt itself above Yahweh, that's trying to exert itself into Yah's path to distract us to go a different way. No, we trample it under our feet and we break the chains the enemy has on us and on his people, and we lift up his name. So this refers to our walk. Every step we take, we are to commit it to Yah. We're following his way. We're supposed to be those faithful servants. We're supposed to be following him, like a military march with a goal in mind. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just remembering in high school, we did not have a marching band, but we marched once a year in the Norwegian Independence Day parade. And so we had to practice before we go march in the parade. And we had to practice keeping straight lines. And that was being in alignment with the person in front of us, equal distant lines, which was helped to be maintained by the person on the right, and who would say, if someone was getting out of line, guide right. And so you had an eye on the person at the end who is maintaining our straight line moving forward, and the person in front of us to maintain that straight line. So we had an orderly walk. And I think takes us back to last week's conversation. He it talks, what was it that the person who orders his way, his conversation, right? I have to look it back up. Will show forth the glory of God. I have to look that up real quick.
Well, we were talking about the way is also our conversation. It's what we say and what we do. It's both.
And but that conversation is the word direct.
Right. And we studied that last week. So we have this idea that this journey, if we're following his way, the way, we choose the way of the wilderness, or we choose the way of the Philistines. We choose the narrow path, or we choose the wide path. It's not referring, if we're following Yah's way, to a pleasant stroll. Instead, it's referring to this military march of a group being sent forth to forcefully break, to trample upon anything that would exalt itself up against the kingdom of Yahweh. And I think that's important, because that sums up what our walk is supposed to be. You were going to say something?
Yeah, Psalm 50, verse 23. And it was a song praise song we used to sing. But whoso offereth praise glorifieth me, and to him that ordereth his conversation aright, I will show the salvation of Yah.
Okay, and put our word in there in the right place.
So to him that ordereth his direct aright, will I show the salvation of Yah. So it uses the word conversation. However, the correct word is direct. He orders his way. He orders his path. He orders his journey, his customs, his besides the conversation. It's all the same word.
Well, and you go back into that spelling that we talked about later when we broke down the dalet, the resh, and the kaf. And with that kaf as a suffix, we have that footsteps, the inheritance, the power, possession, and authority. So as we're walking in the way, we're learning to walk in power and authority. And aren't we supposed to walk in power and authority if we're trampling on anything that sets itself up against Yahweh and his kingdom?
Do you ever look at the military?
Do we walk in power and authority? I think most people do not.
Well, think about this. The military marches that you see, specifically when you look at China and you look at North Korea and you look at Russia, when they do their big military parades, think about the power that when those armies, those soldiers are all in their military array, perfectly distanced, left, right, front, back, every, whether they're doing goose step, big steps, high steps, whatever it is a powerful thing to watch. Well, it looks very formidable.
I think about even the sound of a group of people walking in step together, which of course militarily would be the easiest way to describe that, or a marching band or something like that. It's very powerful when you hear the feet hit the ground at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a powerful sound. I know there.
Well, it'll destroy things. Like when you get a military array walking, marching together like that, and they come to a bridge. If they continue to do that, they will destroy the bridge. That cadence will actually destroy the bridge, and so that's when the soldiers have to go into their own step until they get to the other side, and then they get back into their military array.
Well, that even reminds me, and I did a teaching on this, a long time ago. I'd have to look back at my notes, but there's something to that sound too, as Joshua and the people, as they marched around Jericho over and over in that cadence, in that step, there was power in the frequency of what they were doing that weakened those walls.
Yeah,
because they were doing it together. I'm not saying it wasn't supernatural. It was. The fall of Jericho, the walls of Jericho was supernatural, but still they were in cadence together in a military watch, destroying anything that would exalt itself up above Yah, walking in their authority and possessing their rightful inheritance and the promises of Yah. And that's what this word is about. That's what the way is about. And something about the frequency of what they were doing, and then the shofar blew, it decimated the walls. It decimated the foundations of what the enemy had put forth. So what is it for us when we're walking in lockstep with one another instead of being divided? Do you not understand, people, that the reason conflict results among brothers and sisters in his word is because he wants us the enemy wants us divided so we fall, because if we're united, it will bring the walls down of his kingdom.
The frequency of it. The frequency of it. That's where Dr. Horowitz was talking about the frequency of 528, which is the frequency of love, and it's healing. And so what does the enemy want to do? He wants us to tune to 440 instead of 444. 444A. The enemy wants us to tune to 440, because then you'll never hit that 528. You'll never hit those perfect frequencies that unite people, that causes the power of the frequencies that is God-given, that is powerful. It brings breakthrough. And the enemy doesn't want that. He wants a cacophonic frequency so that people are in disarray and in chaos and in confusion and always feeling have this upset feeling inside of them because of that frequency.
So when you're listening to music and other things, even today of the world, it's going to, in the U.S. anyway, it's going to bring chaos within you. Eddie was talking about how the walls went down like an elevator. And I remember when we went to Jericho and we saw the ruins and even saw the parts of Rahab's house, to think underground that they came down like an elevator. And how do things come down when the walls come down these days? The only way they fall down like that as if certain bombs or explosions have been set, so they topple down on top of each other.
Mhm.
And that brings us back to frequency again.
Mhm.
Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
instead of just crumbling aside. The
Yep.
frequency of Yah's people in march together, following the way together. There's power when we're together. We each feel a part. So we've got to walk and possess our rightful inheritance and his promises as we walk together, because the way is directly also connected to the mishpat. What's mishpat? Is judgments. Genesis 18:19. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way, the derek of Yahweh, to do justice and judgment, mishpat, that Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken to him. Abraham and his household are charged and responsible for ensuring what? So we are to ensure that justice comes forth, that judgment comes forth as we're walking, as we're marching in lockstep, as we're walking together, and we're supposed to carry out his way along the road. We should, when injustice comes across our path, we should call it what it is and do something about it. We should make things right. In other words, we're ensuring that individuals receive what they're due. And whether that means dealing with the enemies of the kingdom or ensuring that we receive our rightful inheritance, we have a job to do as we're walking along the way, as we're marching together, as we're on this journey, making his kingdom above all other kingdoms. Are we walking together? Are we walking apart? Are we walking the narrow path? The way of the wilderness? Are we going to walk the path of the Philistines? Are we going to walk with that which those who worship and do things their own way, and that has a lot of promises of advancement and materialism? Are we going to walk his way? Which is it? Because there's one way we can walk in the power and authority of the enemy, or the power and authority of Yah.
We always center this around Torah, but then when you think about all of these other things like frequencies, I see these other things in the chat there. When we talk about the frequencies, even there is a correct frequency. There's the frequencies that we shouldn't be tuning to, and the frequencies that we should, because one brings life, the other one brings chaos, confusion, and death. And so, by the way, if you tune to 440, when A is tuned to 444, then you will have a note at 432 in there, but you won't have a note at 432 if you tune to 440 the way America does. But that's just a musical thing. Frequencies are important. You'll hit the right frequencies.
But I don't want us to get lost on frequencies.
But the reason why I say that is because I think this is part of the revelation that's been brought for us, because life is revealed in the Torah, and I think these frequencies are revealed in the Torah, which all lead to life, which is Yeshua is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the dare.
Which way are we following? Are we walking as a march with a military purpose in mind, trampling upon anything that exalts itself against the Yah's kingdom, making sure justice and judgment are right and righteousness prevail along the way, with walking in power and authority together as one? Are we walking our own way, or the way of the Philistines? Are we doing what Abraham's household was charged with, or doing our own way? And that is going to bring us to the end of tonight's discussion. And guess what? We're not done. We are not done with talking about the way yet. Yeah, there's more to come. But I think I think it gives us a whole new picture. And maybe it's not revelation to you, but it's a reminder to you. But maybe it is, that the way has to do with our conversation that we talked about last week, walking together and as a military unit, or walking apart. Which is it?
Yeah. And in harmony. But thank you for joining us. This has been John Craig.
And Sandy.
And we'll see you next time here on Walking in Spirit and Truth.
Shalom.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.